Welcome, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to how top AI companies actually use AI in legal. Thank you for joining us. I am your host, Tommy Tavares Ferreira, the Chief Strategy Officer at Lawtrades. Lawtrades supports in-house legal teams just like yours when you need lawyers or legal ops expertise on demand, especially right now as more teams are hiring our legal engineers to operationalize AI in their day-to-day work. Today, you're going to hear specific examples of AI adoption from three different environments: how the use case was chosen, what the tech stack looks like, how it was stress tested, and just as importantly, what they decided not to automate. And as you listen, keep one question in the back of your mind. If I had to put one AI use case into production in my legal team in the next 90 days, what would it be? So by the end of this webinar, you should have at least one idea you can realistically ship, not someday, but today. With that, let's start with introductions. Sean, I'm going to kick it to you first, then we'll go Kyle, Suk, and Kristen.
Thank you so much, Tommy, and pleasure to be with you all today. My name is Sean D'Souza. I am the Chief of Staff to the General Counsel at Google, and I also have the pleasure of leading our legal operations team.
Thanks, Sean. I am Kyle Summerville. I am legal counsel at Zapier. Been here about 2 years now, coming in from doing M&A work at a big law firm.
Great. Hi, I'm Suk Kim. I'm the General Counsel at Zapier, and it's a pleasure to be part of this wonderful panel and looking forward to all the discussions today.
Hi, I'm Kristen Thorn. I am Legal Operations Specialist with Reddit. I've been here for about 1.5 years and excited to join the panel today.
And we are so excited to have all of you. So, Sean, we're going to start with you. You're in one of the most AI-forward environments on Earth, save for our guests from Zapier and Reddit, of course. But the thing this audience wants is the operating model, how you all created adoption at scale, your 3-pillar approach, and then I want to make it tangible with one exact specific workflow at the end. So let's set the stage. Roughly, how big is the legal org? What's the legal ops footprint in Google? And then talk about the categories of work that are AI impacted today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Tommy. So what I would say is this, that we, as you can probably imagine, between our full-time employees as well as our extended workforce, are probably the size of maybe one of the largest global law firms on the planet, right? Because just sort of given the scale and size of the company and the level of different products and things that we go through, it's a really sizable organization. From a legal operations perspective, I have a core organization that is of about 25 people, but then we also have an extended group that also I manage. It's called our Legal Investigative Services or Support Team. That is also a part of it. And so when we take a look at all of the operational type of folks across the entirety of the department, we're probably talking in the 100, 150 range in terms of all the folks that are living and breathing the opportunity to be able to make us the most AI efficient organization possible. So when we think about what are some of the categories or the ways in which we are using AI or looking to use AI, I think the answer is honestly, there isn't a place where we are not using AI in the way in which we're running the business and trying to be able to think about how to operate more effectively. Some of the key points or examples are, as you can imagine, more broadly, the concept of when we are in what I would call content and work product generation. So anytime you're generating something like that, those are natural and obvious places where you would use that. So thinking about first drafts, memos, briefs, contracts, things of that nature, those are all areas where we're leaning into in order to think about how AI can help us to be able to, how AI can impact our ability to be able to do that work effectively. Another example, of course, is e-discovery, which I think a lot of us are all sort of grappling with and understanding. As those volumes continue to grow and exceed the human capacity, how do we manage to use those services more, AI more effectively in order to deliver those services? And then lastly, there are some more niche areas, thinking about, for instance, drafting of patent applications, where we're seeing really great and promising opportunities in order to be able to leverage the strengths of AI in order to be able to facilitate that, working closely with our outside counsel to help them and make sure that we're improving the overall space there. So those are some of the various different areas. But again, I go back to saying, like, I don't think there's not a single point or place in the organization that isn't looking forward to the opportunity to be able to use AI effectively.
Yeah, and dare we all say, probably we're going to see it show up in more and more and more workflows. Like, we probably won't have limits. Right now, I think we're in a really conservative place with it where there are limits, there's lawyers in the loop, there's approvals, right? But we're going to get to a more autonomous place, I'm sure. And when we're thinking about autonomy, we probably have to think about like frameworks that support it. And I know you all have a three sort of tier framework that is it's like your foundation. So would love for you to tell the audience like what that is and what that helps.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things just to put into context about this is the notion that we are incredibly lucky as Googlers to be able to be part of a really rich culture in this company of eating our dog food, so to speak. And so even like almost 2 years ago was when we started to get to play around with tools like Gemini and Notebook LM and things of that have now become such a core part of everybody's day in and day out. And granted, of course, back in that point in time, they weren't necessarily the levels of sophistication and capability that they are right now. But what we recognized was what was coming. And so in order for us to be able to approach that, one of the things we saw first and foremost was that we needed to be an AI fluent organization. And part of, again, having that access to it, pillar one was this notion of how do I, as a normal person who doesn't have AI as my day in and day out job responsibility, start to use these tools in more of a self-service type of manner. So it's me taking a look at what are the workflows, the things that I do on a daily basis, and how can Gemini, how can Gems, how can Notebook LM, all of these various different tools that we have readily available make a difference and impact in my life. The second pillar became where things start to go a little bit beyond what I could do on my own. I've got a great idea or some type of friction in the work that I'm delivering. And I need somebody to help me just think it through a little bit, somebody with a little bit more technical dexterity in order to be able to help essentially take a vision of a possibility and make it better. And that's this concept of an incubator, of saying like, look, we can source lots of really good ideas from the folks who are doing this work day in and day out. How can we combine them with some people on my team who we call the Office of the General Counsel, or OGC? How can somebody in OGC work with a subject matter expert in order to be able to just quickly prototype whether or not there's a possible solution that can be put in place, of just taking it a little beyond that self-service type of model? And then the third use case is when things go a little bit further. So this is when you need to connect into your matter management systems, into your e-discovery capabilities, into your contract lifecycle management. And then we partner really closely with our corporate engineering or corporate IT organization in order to think about how to be able to build those solutions. Those still, they still do tend to operate in more of an iterative, not an iterative fashion, as opposed to this long drawn out software development lifecycle. But in our minds, that was our ability to be able to take advantage of the technology that we had readily available for these three different use cases: those self-service ones, those incubation opportunities, and the ones in which they become more of these enterprise platforms.
And, you know, our audience members don't need to be at Google to decide like what are three tiers we can make, what are three buckets. What you're doing is essentially you're just creating frameworks for what is it that is self-serve for this team, what is it that needs your collaboration from your peers, and what is it that actually needs like engineering, right? Like, and I bet a lot of organizations can relate to that if there are 2 to 10 lawyers on a team. That's probably a really good model. Where can I go and buy, you know, a chat tool by myself, and where do I need some people to weigh in because it's going to start touching data, right? Like, and that obviously is a place where everyone gets a little bit nervous. What is it touching? How can it write to our systems? Can it write? Like, how do I put some guardrails around this? So how did you all decide what was sort of allowed versus not allowed in those categories?
Yeah, it's so one, we certainly needed to take into consideration this notion of like we as legal professionals working this know are very comfortable in understanding the difference between privileged information, confidential, need to know, and understanding those data labels and recognizing who should have access to what in order to allow us to be able to still continue to, in most cases, maintain privilege from that. We have a dedicated team as part of our product council group inside of Google who really worked very diligently to, like, each and every single time a new tool is made available to us, to evaluate it, to understand what are some of the back-end ways by which that information is being logged, what are some of the access controls that are put in place, and then allowing us to be able to categorize tools according to whether or not they are category 0, meaning that they are readily available for privileged information, versus things that are a little bit further down, category 3, where you're okay to play around with it, but you wouldn't want to use that for privileged information or confidential information. And so just trying to be able to create those guiding principles for folks so that they know where they should be thinking about in order to be able to make sure that we are maintaining that data integrity as being really at the core of our ability to be able to use these tools effectively.
Two things that your response made me think of. One is anyone charged with tagging your data in that way? Like how does one know that it's privileged?
As you can imagine, we've done a fair amount on our side in order to be able to make sure that that concept is really well articulated across the board. And by and large, as we not to sound too, and I'll also confess to not being a lawyer, so I'm apologies to any of my lawyer friends if I'm butchering this, but the concept of privilege obviously is grounded on this notion of getting actual advice from a legal professional, from a counsel. And so understanding when we are memorializing that legal advice in the form of an email, of a document, of a slide, what have you, really becomes one of those critical components. And then so therefore understanding as part of the logging or tagging, when you are, say, taking a document that has counsel advice, aka privileged information, and putting that into Gemini, into Notebook LM, et cetera. How is that being used? Where is it being stored? What are some of those implications following the data in order to understand, does the concept of privilege still apply to that information or to the output that's coming from it? And that was the forensics that our product counsel team did in conjunction with our security organization in order to make sure that, yes, we do feel confident that we are maintaining that concept of privilege so that it does still continue to hold true should the need arise in court someday.
Not a lawyer, are you? You did great, Sean. You did great. Well, no, that's fine. And I think more of what is probably something for folks to consider is also like, how are they managing all of their knowledge generally? Like there will be a lot of work that goes into knowledge center maintenance, of tagging, of categorizing and ensuring that things are not supposed to be archived. Because really, when we get to that state where we want to be autonomous, a lot of this information has to be tagged right or put in the right place or like pulling from the right system, or the garbage in, garbage out ethos will sort of apply, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's been, like, I will say that is probably going to be what 2026 is really we're going to see that really start to come to fruition. We spent a lot of time, I would say we could look at 2025 for us as having been a really foundational and piloting type of year where we were setting the foundation, understanding certain things that are working, worked with specific teams in order to understand how do we organize their existing data so that we could train on it effectively and then be able to create chatbots that would be, or agents that are not going to hallucinate, that are going to have that confidence level that we really care about. And what we did is we tried a few different approaches. We found what's going to work for some teams. And again, because it's probably not a one size fits all when it comes to data management and really thinking about developing those repositories in an appropriate manner. So I highly encourage teams to just start experimenting, understanding where you're going to be, understanding some of your use cases of how frequently are you adding or ingesting new information that you want to be able to train on and put that into place. And then trying to be able to find that right mix of how to be able to get the capabilities that you need, but also recognizing the fact that there is a very human and labor intensive component that comes to data management, requiring individuals to feed into it in order to be able to create that greater good that's there. And so I would say we learned a lot through trial and error, looking at different ways of being able to manage data effectively in 2025. And now we're looking to apply those learnings in 2026 to really scale to the entirety of the organization so that we exit the year feeling really confident that now we can have that agentic future that is predicated on trustworthy data.
Nice. Okay. So I worked really hard to ensure that each of the workflows you were each going to talk about is different. And that is, and when I say I worked, I say we worked, actually. We worked very hard to ensure that we would all have a unique perspective to share. So that it wasn't, just sort of three leading organizations talking about how they automated something very similar. Yours is a unique one, Sean. I'm not going to lie. I hadn't heard it. So talk to me about the unique workflow that you had shared with this team. Why did you do it and how does it help you?
Yeah, absolutely. So the one that I had inside of the Gemini application chatbot, there is this concept of a gem, and basically what a gem is it's essentially a self-contained, trained chatbot that you create a persona of. And about a year and a half ago, I sat down and I started a gem, and I called it the legal chief of staff. And I explained to it that the persona that it was to be the chief of staff to the general counsel of Google. So to go off and research and understand all of the things that are there, I provided it again because now it was a category 0 tool that I could feel confident I could put privileged and confidential information into. I started feeding it information about my team, the sort of the roles and responsibilities that we have, and then I asked it to ask me questions that would allow the gem, to become better at helping to advise me. And now, as a result of doing that over the course of almost a year and a half, it has become such an indispensable part of my workflow, meaning that anytime I have a crazy idea, I often just will sit down with a gem and I'll start having a brainstorming session in which I talk through and understand what are some of the various different components that go into it. And so now, as you can imagine, on a daily basis, whenever I have any of those ideas, or let's say, for instance, I need to generate a presentation, or I need to summarize something, a complex issue for my boss in order to be able to make sure that she's prepared for whatever she needs to go into, I have just this amazing opportunity in order to be able to shortcut how I put all those pieces of information together. It's got this richness of understanding the entirety of my background and experience in order to then be able to just really rapidly accelerate the opportunity for me to be able to get things done. And it's so it's become, again, it's a 2 point. It's like this digital twin that I've got. But the great part about it is that it just continues to get better and better, just because of each and every single interaction that I've been able to have with it.
And do you only interact with it, or for example, does your GC interact with it when you have the day off?
I did ask her at one point in time if she wanted to get rid of me and just replace me with it, but she said for the time being, I still hold my hold my weight here, and I'm still around.
Risky work there, Sean. In a world where a lot of lawyers go
I'm
ahead.
I'm an operations guy, and so my entire life has been trying to be able to work myself out of a job, and so but no, I say it in jest. It's a wonderful and I think, look, this is the thing that I would also say now, almost again a couple years into this AI transformation, I am definitely not an AI doomer. I feel as if all indications to me are that we are going to stand on the shoulders of this technology in order to be able to reach greater and greater heights and accomplish even greater things. And so that opportunity, it's just now I look at it as it's Sean plus plus in terms of the ability to be able to take these are still my ideas. They're still the things that I'm going forward with, but it's now augmented as having a digital twin that allows me to remember these amazing things that I hadn't necessarily those dots that I hadn't connected myself over the course of this entire corpus of information that I've generated as a result of being a part of this role. So yes, I do think that there's still a future for a human Sean, but that the opportunity in order to be able to just be that much more successful is something that I think we can all sort of implement on a daily basis in order to just get that help, that helpful hand that thinks in a way that is at least similar to the way in which I'm thinking myself.
Yeah, there's a question that came up, and I'm gonna save it for later, but I want to acknowledge that the person asked a question about that feeling of, will this replace us, and that apprehension, right? And so I think we're going to talk a little bit about that later, and where people are leaning when they find it supplemental rather than replacing us. And some of it is just that, in your digital twin, it's synthesizing information so much faster than you can. No offense, Sean, you're a very bright person, but it's recognizing patterns and themes, and just maybe contextualizing in a way that is surpassing you. And so we're still in that phase of this is very supplemental, and there's still the human overlay of what is unique to you, your experience, that I think keeps us sort of working together right now.
Absolutely.
My final question for you, and then we're going to look at a really cool workflow over at Zapier. They really brought the show and tell. But Sean, before we move on, talk to me about what adoption looks like. Now, I know your digital twin is something that you're utilizing, but you did lay that operational foundation of like what people can self-serve, what they can't, what they need Eng for. So you all are doing a lot over there. How did you get people to actually jump in, take the leap, not be the lawyers that are like, this is going to replace me, I'm not adopting it?
Yeah. The first thing I think like that was the aha for me was, and this is again going back a little while, is the reality that we're seeing. And like, I mean, like if for any of us like who are like following the news, AI is like there are new AI tools that are being released almost on a daily basis, sometimes even on an hourly basis. And so it is so different from any previous type of technology that has been introduced to us in the sense that it's not static. It's not something where you can say, here's a new piece of software and you train somebody on it and good to go. This is really more about my way of thinking about it. It's not about learning how to use AI. It's about learning how to learn how to use AI, and
Mhm.
that is the intentional fluency that we want our legal department to have. So how do we get there? There were a couple of things in particular. One is that you absolutely have to have leadership vision, and that sort of modeling it from the top of saying like this is where we are going. This is something that really matters to us. So take notice of the fact that this is becoming a part of our job in order to have the supplemental ability to be able to just be AI empowered as part of our future. A few ways that we went about doing that. Obviously, of course, starting at the very beginning of just creating that sense of self-empowerment. We talked about pillar number one earlier there, giving folks access to it. But even more importantly, we created accountability as part of our performance reviews. We've made it institutionalized that we should, or memorialized that you have to use AI on a weekly basis, one way or another. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, but just making sure that people were comfortable with the notion that this should be a part of our day-to-day activities. And as we've gone from there, taking that incentivization of really thinking about that fluency, we created a community, having ways of being able to have AI ambassadors across each and every single part of our legal department, recognizing that there were these individuals that were starting to emerge as being these amazing legal experts slash technologists who were tinkering, coming up with innovative solutions, connecting them together, sharing those ideas, creating a forum for them to be able to grow. Recognizing there's another group that is the ones that aren't resistant, but they just don't necessarily feel as if they have the time in the day in order to figure out how to use that. Great. Let's create a training series so we're increasingly providing more and more information for allowing folks to be able to get there. And then lastly, really being very honest and open about what is the human in the loop future that we still continue to hold true. So again, I'm grateful for the fact that my gem provides me a lot of raw material in order to be able to get there. But what I recognize is that I bring the ability to be able to take a look at that and understand whether can this information be trusted? Is it accurate? Is it actually reflective of what we're trying to be able to do? How do I integrate that information into these various different workflows, seeing how it connects dots together, how it connects to something that happened 6 months ago? And then lastly, just having this sense of taste, knowing whether or not, does this actually look good? Is it actually something that passes muster and I can feel confident about sharing it with my colleagues in order to go forward? So having that concept of building that AI fluency, having the opportunity in order to then be able to create community around the way in which we support each other, and then really sort of, again, combining that with this notion of leadership vision has been what's allowed us to be able to think about how it prepares us for that future.
Excellent. Okay. Sean, sit tight. We're not done with you, but we're going to pivot to our pals over at Zapier, who are going to, thank you so much, Sean. They're going to proceed with our show and tell portion. So, Kyle and Suk, I'm so excited to have you all here. So, Kyle, why don't you set the stage for us? Talk to us about how big the team is at Zapier, and then what kind of work pushed you into this first example workflow that you're going to share with us? Talk to us about what the workflow is and what pushed you to get there.
Yeah. So thanks again, Tommy, for doing this. This is great. And I'm looking forward to showing you guys the actual workflow. But we actually have 6 people on our legal team. We just hired a new commercial counsel a couple months ago. So before that, we were only at 5. And really the thing that pushed us into automating was, well, first of all, we're an automation company, so we're always looking to automate anything we can using our own products. But the second thing was we're a really lean legal team. with a ton of requests and volume of work coming in. The reason that they hired me, the reason that we hired another commercial counsel is because we have so much of this work volume coming in, and a lot of it is work that can be automated. And when I think about what to automate, it's always things that are kind of high volume. So the workflow that I'm going to show you later is NDA requests. We get a ton of those, as pretty much any in-house team gets, I assume. Uh, and lower complexity things is where you want to start, because it's like if it's really high volume and low complexity, you don't necessarily want the higher paid lawyers on your team doing that kind of work. You can use the new tools that we have for automation and AI to make those things kind of go away as much as possible, while still maintaining the high value that you're bringing to the rest of the company. So the workflow that I'm going to show is our NDA review workflow, and the way that we got to that is essentially we have about like 400 or so NDAs that we review every year. And before this, it was kind of like a manual process where we each individual NDA that comes in, we're kind of going back and forth with the requester. We have to obviously review the entire NDA that comes in, redline as needed, go back to the counterparty, et cetera. So that's kind of where we started with that one.
And so, so what made you think, besides the volume, and you're downplaying it slightly, which everyone's going to see in a minute, because you have sort of fully automated this thing. Like NDA is always a good place to start. I am not disagreeing. I know that that's always that high volume, probably lower risk, right? But you created this matrix whereby you have colors and you have determinations of what something is, and then it's auto redlining and it's creating tickets. And I'm not going to steal your thunder at all. So why don't you talk us through what you actually do with this workflow?
Yeah, so it's a really cool workflow. I'm proud of building it. I just by way of background, I do not have a technical background at all. I am just a lowly M&A lawyer who came into Zapier using I was kind of like using Zapier as like a personal productivity automation tool when I was working as an M&A lawyer, but no coding experience or anything like that. And so when I came in, I saw this entire workflow that we were doing, as we just talked about. And basically, I took the entire thing, as you said, and from the intake. So when we get a new NDA request, whether that's in Slack, which is our kind of communication of choice at Zapier that we use for everything, or Ironclad or another CLM, we use Ironclad, obviously. Once that is done, this workflow essentially sends an immediate message to the requester and says, "Hey, we got this NDA." AI reviews the actual contract and gives it a risk rating. So red, yellow, or green risk rating based on our playbook. We gave it things like the jurisdictions or the governing law jurisdictions where we can agree to it, or the if there's a non-solicitation provision, those kind of things, where if those things were to be in the contract, then give it this risk rating. It sends all of that back over to the requester and says, "Hey, based on this NDA, it's a red risk rating, so that means that it's going to take a little bit longer for a review. There's going to be a red line. Kyle's going to follow up with you and the counterparty as needed." And from there, it actually does the first pass at a red line of the NDA. And so once the NDA is redlined, it sends it over to me. I'm kind of the human in the loop. And I get the red line with that report that says, "Hey, we said this was a red risk rating because of these 3 reasons. Take a look at this red line, and if it looks good, you can send it out to the counterparty." Again, from there, we use Ironclad as our CLM, so I can just go into the agreement itself. I can look at the red line instead of having to do the full 30 to 35 minute review of an NDA. It just does that first pass for me, and if it looks good, I can just send it out. So it is a really nice.
This is incredible because up until the point where it came to you, it was
Yep,
done by AI. Okay. Are you going to show it
exactly.
to us?
Yes, let's do that.
Okay. All right, everybody. Hold on while Kyle is going to show us how this is going to happen. All right.
So for the
So
purposes of the
see the
demo,
screen.
we created this demo Slack channel here, but when we get a new NDA request, as you'll see in just a second, Suk is going to add it here. There it is. We have this kind of sample NDA here that came up. It's going to basically start this workflow here. And because she just sent that in that channel, it's kicked off this workflow. It's going to extract all of well, there's only one file here, but if there's more than one, it would just extract all of the files. It's going to upload it to our Google Drive and to the correct subfolder. And then it's going to kick off this AI review of the NDA for the reporting purposes. And once it does that, it's going to give it that risk rating that we were talking about. And then it's going to send a message back to Suk that says, hey, we've received this. Kyle's going to take a look at it. Here's the initial risk rating. And basically, here are the next steps and what you can expect. This is the live demo. Oh, there we go. I was going to say, it takes a minute, but it was already done. So you can see here, it says, hi, Suk. It tags back the requester. And says AI by Zapier has categorized this as red risk level because it includes a non-solicitation provision in Section 9. Governing law is Nevada, which is not one of the approved jurisdictions that we've chosen. And then it goes on to tell her that this a red risk level means that it needs extra review from Kyle, tags me in, and it says it may require red lines to remedy, so the process may take more time. So from there, the requester knows, okay, the legal team has it now. It's going to be a little bit of a longer process because it needs red lines, and now it's going to actually, you'll see here, go and do a first pass at an NDA red line. And once it does that, it's going to upload that red line to that same folder so that we have 2 copies of it. One red line and one clean, and then it's going to send that redlined NDA to me for review. And that's where that human in the loop step comes in.
Kyle, while it's redlining, because
Yes.
that's what's happening right now, it's redlining.
That's exactly right. Yep.
I have a couple of questions that came in. So first of all, this is amazing we got in, but the initial red, green, yellow happened from Zapier. That's correct?
That's exactly right. Yep, right here.
Wanted to make sure I could answer that correctly. And then I think you're going to get to this, but someone just did ask, how does it get to Ironclad? If you're going to get to it, it's okay. We can talk about it when you get there. And then people want to know, like, how long did it take to set this up and who did it? I know who did it.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So for demo purposes, we didn't do it in Ironclad because obviously we can't show our Ironclad instance, but yeah. This is essentially, it's exactly the same, except this first step here would be, instead of a new message in Slack, it would just be when a new Ironclad workflow kicks off. And then this kind of filters based on same thing here. It only kicks off if someone mentioned an NDA, if the title of the document it has an NDA in it or non-disclosure agreement, et cetera. And so, yeah, there's the first step would just be new Ironclad workflow kicks off with an NDA, basically. And so then instead of like the Google Drive steps, it would just upload it directly to the Ironclad workflow. And that's actually what we do in practice here at Zapier.
Okay, excellent. And then we have someone who is, oh, hey, Tiffany. We have Tiffany saying, I got to figure out how to do this with Gemini. You know, I think there's someone here who might be able to help you with that, Tiffany. So you guys can offline. Of course, I'm happy to facilitate introductions. Okay, so now it's redlining, right?
It's actually done now, so we can go into that.
We're already redlined.
On the Gemini point, the AI by Zapier step there that does this, the red, yellow, green, you can use Gemini, you can use OpenAI or Anthropic as your AI model. So you can actually, if you have access to Gemini, you could actually use that in this as well.
And I want to be super clear too. Like, I know we're mentioning certain redlining tools, certain CLMs. I think, we're sort of product agnostic in that the idea is see if you can replicate this with what you have. Like, I don't want anyone in the audience to feel like they have to go out and buy certain products. You maybe could be very impressed by what is happening here and see if your CLM does it. And just, be curious about how this was structured rather than thinking you might need a different CLM. That would be my recommendation.
Yep, exactly. That's a good point. Okay, so yeah, the red line is done. All of this would be happening in the background, by the way. I normally would not be sitting looking at my screen hoping that it does it really quickly. But here it is. It's got the red line here. I can just click on it to take a look at it. You'll see it's giving me these kind of approve changes needed buttons there that I can click. But first, obviously, I want to just take a look at the NDA itself. I will scroll down here. Okay, so you'll see it took out this provision here where it says at the termination of the agreement, you have to delete all of the confidential information. That's just one of the items in our NDA playbook. It also removes the non-solicitation provision in the entirety, again, in our NDA playbook. And you'll notice here, actually, the governing law jurisdiction of Nevada, it gave us that as like a note to look at because that's what we've told it to do, but it didn't take it out of in the red line. And the reason for that is, again, we told our redlining system, we don't actually want you to remove it from the document. We just want to be notified of it so we can take a look and see if we can agree to it. So this actually looks great to me. So I would just go back in here and approve this. Once that's approved, we'll go over to Suk again, and it sends her a message and says, hey, Suk, a red line of this NDA, and links it here within the message, has been approved by Kyle. He'll now share this with the counterparty and he'll provide you with next steps. So again, with a CLM, the next steps would obviously be to send it over to the counterparty, to send it out for signatures and all of that. We have automations for as well, but for demo purposes, this is where we are. But this has just saved us so much time. I think we calculated it was like 5 weeks of my time in a year were saved just from this workflow alone. And so this has just been such a time saver for us and such a quality of life improvement too for our stakeholders, because we no longer have to take the time to message them back. And sometimes we might forget to tell them like these status updates and things like that. So they know exactly what's happening, how it's happening, and why it's happening, all through automation, which is super cool.
Yeah, just the messaging back and forth. Kyle, two very specific questions. Can it include comments on the document?
It can, yes. We have turned that off, but we actually the tool that we use, which is Ivo, again, you can use any other tool that you want, but our tool can include comments within the document itself, and they would look like they came from you.
And then the other question, which happens to be Ironclad specific, this person uses it. Does the requester in Ironclad also get a notification?
That's exactly how we do it at Zapier. We have the comment here just copied over to Ironclad as well in a comment, and it tags the requester in it.
Excellent, excellent. Okay. And I am certain people are going to have more questions. We have two more panelists, and then I'm going to go through all the Q&A, but I did answer one of those. Okay, excellent. So we are not done with Zapier though, because Suk, you are not very technical, which a lot of people are going to relate to. You are not very technical, but you very proudly built something. So I'd love for you to take the audience through what that is.
Sure, absolutely. Actually, I have to say, I'm not very technical, and I've built a number of different things on Zapier. It is quite accessible and usable for folks who are not technical. And so kind of Kyle is member of our team, and he has built a ton of different workflows, but other people on on our team have built a bunch of workflows as well that's both used system-wide by the legal team or specifically for themselves. The one I'm going to show here is this, what we call our AI, and we made a demo version of it. We have one live that's been going on for about 6 months now. It's a AI kind of regs monitor because, the regs are changing all the time. And it's really hard to keep up to date. And, I, like many folks, subscribe to different alerts by law firms, but it's on lots of different subjects, and it's always hard to categorize. And so we just set up this, I set up this monitor to post on our legal team Slack channel every Monday morning. It actually runs Sunday night. And so it posts a weekly update of the various regulatory or case law updates in kind of AI, both in the US and globally. And so if you can see that it posted here, and so our V1 of this just posted this. And if you go into kind of the thread, then it goes into much more details of kind of the summary. In V1, it didn't do this, but in V2, I thought, oh, wouldn't it be really great? Not just giving us a summary, but tagging the members on the legal team who's responsible for that area. So for example, Benjamin is our product and privacy counsel. And so if there's relevant information, it'll tag him to take a look. Laura is our employment counsel, so it'll tag her to go take a look. There's certain areas like that fall into kind of default bucket for me. And so that was kind of the next thing we did. And then the version after that is I thought, well, it's one thing to kind of tag them. Wouldn't it be great then if it just automatically scheduled some time on their calendar to work on this during that week, right? So then the agent will then look at their for this demo purposes, I only connected my calendar, but you can take some time and connect up folks on the legal team. So whenever somebody's tagged, then it will then go into their calendar and schedule a 30-minute session for them to come back and take a look at it so that they don't forget to do this. Because whether it's on Slack or others, we get requests all the time. And it's really hard to make sure and follow up. And so this is just to make sure that folks can follow up. And what's really neat about this is kind of, as I mentioned, we set up kind of V1, and it took me 2 hours, 3 hours to set up the V1. And we'll show kind of, this is the agent, right? And so you can either build it by like the instructions follow, that's the prompting for the agent. And you can either build that all yourself, or you can use our kind of chat with Copilot, kind of Zapier version of this, and you can kind of describe what you want, and you can also work with it on additional iteration to add features to it or add steps to it or make it simpler. And so that's kind of what we're doing here. And what's nice about it is there are different connections. And so I don't have to think too hard on like how to send Slack messages or how to trigger it and how to kind of connect up different apps. And so I have this running. What's nice about it is it does link back up to the sources. And so that's really nice. If I'm interested in something, I can just connect back up to the law firms that it's looking at. And if I need some additional information, I can, it's often the firms that we work with so that I can call up and get some more information if needed. So this was just an example of somebody who's not terribly technical, but I can get my hands on and build directly.
Yeah, and I know a ton of lawyers who had to go through lots of emails to get regulatory updates, and like you're almost sort of RSS feeding this agentically in a way that what I love about what you do with this workflow. And again, the agent you happen to be using is Zapier, and folks can use what is available to them, and this should hopefully be very inspiring. Whatever is available to you, whatever you are allowed to use at your company, let this be inspiration for the art of the possible, basically. But this agent is taking all that info. But what I love that you did is two things. I love that you're tagging in the people whose practice area it is, because it's not just a ton of noise for everyone all the time. It's like, oh, I should look at this. I'm an employment lawyer. Here's something that came in. And the other thing that I'm torn on whether I want to do it or not is having time set up on your calendar to go deal with something. Because if my agent started doing that, there's just not enough hours in the day for things that I should go back and look at. But actually, I kid, that is very, very helpful because you do want your team to set aside some time and look at some of this, right? And so that's really cool that you overlaid that with that second level.
Yeah. Actually, because there's only so much time within the day, it's actually really helpful to put that in the calendar. I mean, you can have it go instead of a calendar, kind of your task list, right?
Sure.
Have it different ways. I just like it kind of
It
time blocked, and it just
is it yeah, no, it's a great point. Is it automated when someone new joins the team?
it's not automated when somebody new joins the team, but it's very easy to modify it by adding that information into the prompt space.
Yep. And then I just got a question on whether you added, I know some of the regulatory sources are your firms. Did you link to any government websites?
We started to do that to government websites, but it was there were so many. There is a
Yep.
person on our team. He has a version of his where it actually connects to all the sources,
Yep.
and that updates kind of his FAQ. So he has a slightly different, twist on it. And so really depending on what you're optimizing for.
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you both so much. This was so incredible. Kristen, I am so excited to talk to you. So Suk showed us what happened when individual lawyers take ownership of AI in their own work, and she's self-proclaimed not very technical, but yet was able to do this. You are going to talk to us about the business when you set up an automation and agents and how that is impacting your business. And you did that with the commercial team. So I guess maybe can you set the stage? Like how was the team functioning and what did you all decide to build that would solve some problems?
Yeah, so we built a Slack bot to open up communication with our sales team. It's a rapidly growing team. There's a lot of policies around it, a lot of internal guidance. So we're a lean team, especially on that commercial side. And they started to notice a trend in the types of questions they were getting. It was messy how they were coming in. And so just to kind of streamline and help protect them, we built a Slack bot that they still manage, but it automates a lot of the answers to the frequently asked questions that come through.
And where did you build the bot off of? Like, what does it tap in to answer FAQs?
Yeah, so we put together a data set based on policies and guidelines that we have internally with our team, as well as company knowledge pages and external web links that are related through use a tool called Glean, which is integrated within Slack. So it limits that knowledge base into that particular Slack channel. So everything that is coming through that channel relates to what is in the bot.
Yeah, we just got someone chatting out Glean in the audience, and I second that. I do think it is something that a lot of legal teams may not know about. And again, like tool agnostic, like we can use a lot of things, but like certainly start thinking about these tools you may not have used in legal, like Zapier, like Glean. And so Tiffany's asking, could you have not just built it in Slack without the Glean overlay?
You could have to an extent. Honestly, ours was just by IT guidance that our IT team preferred all of our bots to be built through Glean.
Yeah, and I'm going to presume it was because that was a source of truth and all the way that they do the permissioning then could feed into Slack in a way that like they already set that source of truth up with Glean. I'm also guessing that you could have done it if your team's preference or if another team's preference wanted to just go directly to Slack, which might be what she's driving at. So like now that you created this Slack-based sort of intake, what does it answer automatically for the commercial team? And does it have any guardrails? Is there anything like Kyle showed us where there's a human in the loop?
Yep. So originally, the majority of these questions were coming in. They were managed by two people on the commercial team. Those two people have now moved to be the Slack channel managers. So the bot will answer your typical questions that are kind of one-to-many answers where it will apply to everybody. It does not do things like completing forms, completing any kind of document review, or any client-specific questions. Those then will flag to the channel managers for further discussion. Sometimes that happens in the Slack channel, sometimes it happens outside of it. But it really focuses on kind of our general policies around contracting, around working with our advertisers. And it covers, we have roughly 250 people in the channel, so it does cover a very wide range of questions at any point in time.
Have you seen a considerable time savings? Was that the metric by which success was judged? How did you all decide like what is success and how are we judging if this is successful?
So there was significant time savings. Both of the channel managers said it saves them about 10 hours a week.
Mm.
Just not having to, before questions were coming in via Slack, email to random email aliases. So it was a game of like pass the question around until it gets where it needs to go. So now questions come in one area, they can see them all the time. They can jump in if something is not right. But it is giving the bulk of the answer, so they're not having to go through documentation and re-answer questions over and over again. So that was really our biggest measure of success. We did hit some other wins though too, with just adding a whole new layer of visibility and transparency, both for the commercial team and for the sales team. It's helped us to start identifying where there might be a need for better training or where maybe things are not presented real clearly to the team. And it has cut down on duplicate questions, of course, because with the visibility, the teams can get their answers from what others have asked.
Yeah, I think the visibility is something that's so incredibly helpful because my rule used to be when I've answered something more than 3 times, I have to build some sort of knowledge center. And granted, that wasn't agentic. But back in my ye old days, that was more of like building like something on a Confluence page or a Notion page where I could say I've answered this 3 times. I got to point people to the right direction. Or inside of a ticket, for example, ticketing system when they wanted like the COI, when they went to go ask us for, a ticket for the COI, it would pop up immediately for them. And now we're at like sort of next level for that stuff. And the visibility of it is both really comforting as a time save, but I think this is the thing that's really scary for people. And what I mean is if a bot is giving a wrong answer, the expounded visibility for others to see it. So if you have you ever found that that happens? And if so, how do you course correct so people don't refer to the wrong answer or so that other bots don't refer to the wrong answer?
Yeah, so it is a two-part thing. For one, their channel managers will correct it in the Slack channel. So they will continue in the thread with the correct answer so that anybody who is going and looking, finding the question, Glean's responses in the thread anyway. So once you open that, you can see the corrected. And they also will then update the feedback back to Glean with the correct answer so that it prevents duplication of kind of that hallucination and wrong information.
That's great. That's great. So what is it what, if anything, did not work in this build? Was there anything that you all were trying to do that you had to accept was not going to work fully autonomous, or did you figure out a way to make all of your wish list work?
So I think for our first version, we were pretty successful in getting what we wanted. We kind of wanted to start with the basics, and that's why we didn't incorporate anything like form completion and document review, where there's much higher chance of errors. If we started with the basics that had very cut and dry answers, they could reference and cite back to where the answers are. I think that set us up for the most success because then it was baby steps.
Yeah.
And that is very much for my team. We operate on baby steps just to help manage. It's a very lean team. Nobody wants to overwhelm themselves, and we try to minimize as many fails, of course, as possible.
Yeah, I like that. Baby steps, like crawl, walk, run. Is there an appetite now that you've seen success here for a phase 2 where you do things like form completion?
Yeah, we're starting to look at that, especially in some different areas. We've brought in some additional tooling. Form completion probably won't live in a Slack bot, but we will look at doing it on the backside. So as the forms come in, the legal team is using tooling in the background to do the form completion.
And in the commercial world, is that type of form, like, are you talking about like an SOW or is that something different, like an RFP form?
It's often on our commercial team, those that work with advertisers, working with different and working on SaaS agreements with different privacy questionnaires on that side of things.
Oh, you just reminded me, if I could host an entire webinar on privacy questionnaires, I feel like 100,000 people would join. That's probably something people want to solve, right? Okay. What is one thing you would do differently if you had to start all over today, and maybe after attending really fun webinars like this and just learning things and hearing from your peers, like, is there anything you all would do different today if you had to start from scratch and go, here's the problem we're trying to solve, and here are the next steps that we take? Any lessons learned, basically?
I don't know if there's so much lessons learned on our end. I think the space is evolving so quickly that you could ask somebody this every 6 months and they'd say, well, there's a new tool that could have done it better. But at the
Yeah.
time, you build based on what you have access to and improve from there. I think that's probably the biggest one for us.
I think you bring up such an important point, which is yes, in a few days, a new tool will come out that can be better. And so the one I think recommendation that maybe people should consider is like, don't sign 10-year contracts, but also you have to do something somewhere. And to the degree that you do something and it's working and there's adoption, there's success, and people are using it, you may not have to pivot to the new shiny that could do it better. Like you might be able to run your course in what you're doing. I think what's most important is that people are open-minded, people are willing to do things, they're willing to try, they're willing to fail, they're willing to reevaluate. So, Kristen, Sean, Kyle Suk, I cannot thank you enough for how incredible this was. We did it. Everybody in the audience, raise your glass if you're ready and inspired and you want to go create. Remember, please, that Lawtrades is a partner with legal teams just like yours. We execute AI strategies that deliver measurable results. So get in touch with me if you want to discuss how our lawyers and legal ops pros can support your AI automation. And a tremendous thank you to all of you. Remember, audience, you all have what you need to get something done. Go pick your best AI workflow now, ship it, and we will see you all on the other side. Thank you all.